Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Hockey Writers season previews. We're up to the Pittsburgh Penguins, and I'm Mike Fink, and I'm joined by Jordan Orth, who covers the Penguins here at the Hockey Writers. So, Jordan, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's still summer here, but we're getting ready. It's almost fall and almost hockey season, so ready to go and doing pretty well. So we're up we're talking Penguins here, and they missed the playoffs 2 years in a row. After making it pretty much every year, they that's all they did. So the big question to start is where do the Penguins stand? They're not rebuilding, as we know. They're kind of pushing forward. We're trying to stay competitive, trying to make a push for a playoff spot. And after the offseason, that was reflected. So where do the Penguins stand? As overall.
Yeah, like you said, they're trying not to do the rebuild, but they're kind of in that gray area where you've got that aging group with Crosby, Malkin, Letang, and last year you throw in Carlson. You're kind of in that gray area, and you're trying to mix in and keep it a competitive team, but it's going to be tough with kind of like I said in a gray area. So
Yeah. Yeah, they keep pushing forward for playoff spots and they're still missing it. They're still coming up short and they're pushing again, it looks like. And Crosby and Malkin is a good place to start because I think that's where the forward unit, it starts with them. And then after that, it really, you wonder where the depth is coming from. And the question is with their forward unit. I mean, they lost Gensel in the offseason. They lost him at trade. They traded him at the trade deadline. They got back Michael Bunting, solid depth addition. What is the state of the forward unit? Right? Is it a top heavy unit still, or is there depth that we should anticipate? What is it? Where does it stand
yeah,
overall?
I mean you're right. You're looking at that top six with Crosby, Malkin. You throw Bunting in with Malkin for a full year. You still got to figure out. Yeah, Drew O'Connor, is he going to fully break out? Does Russ stay healthy? The bottom six is going to be where the real question marks are.
Yeah,
You don't really know who's going to be there. You bring in pieces in the offseason, maybe to help, hopefully to help. You really don't know at this point. I would assume training camp is going to be where that's going to end up getting played out the most. So it's definitely a question mark bottom six.
yeah. I mean, you know what you're getting out of Crosby and Malkin. So, I mean, I guess that's the positive, right? Where at least you're getting steady production from. Used to be it was Crosby, Malkin, Jake Gensel. You at least know what you're getting out of Crosby, Malkin, so you know what you're getting there. It's just the question is everything else, probably. That's like the big
Right.
question. I think. Yeah. Uh, yeah, and I guess shifting gears a bit. I mean it's kind of interesting because the same story is true about the defense a little bit, right? You have Chris Letang, uh, Eric Carlson that they got last year, big trade to get him last offseason from the Sharks, and he played well. Then I mean, not he had a very good season, but is that what is the big storyline for the defense heading into the season?
Well, you're looking to see what happens if Carlson can. He did have a good year. See if he can get clicking a little bit more.
Mhm.
Power play struggled. If you can get the defense, him and Letang working together a little bit on that power play unit, get that going. I mean, you got question marks on the back end too. You got to see if Graves can bounce back after that big contract they gave him. If he can do that, it helps shore up at least two-thirds of your defensive lines. But it's going to be trial by error and try and figure it out on the fly type of thing. I'm going to assume with
Yeah,
bringing in Sebastian Aho and guys like that. I mean, you got
is
some
that
question marks.
is that what the defense looks like? Where you have Aho rounding, you're kind of betting on Aho to round out the unit because Marcus Pettersson is one of those guys who I think he's one of the players that people don't realize how good he is on the defensive ends of the ice. He's actually pretty good there. Uh, so you have Pettersson, you have Letang, you have Carlson, Ryan Graves. I guess that's your top four. Is that what the unit looks like with Aho rounding it out?
It might be. I mean, you could see someone like Owen Pickering make a push for a spot on the team out of camp. One of their top prospects who they're hoping obviously can shore up that position once guys like Letang and Carlson end up moving on in the future here, getting up there in age. But yeah, I mean that bottom pairing is it's a little dicey right now. You don't really know what you
Right.
got, and someone like Aho might end up being where they go with it.
Yeah, and I guess that does make you wonder from a coaching perspective if you'd have a questionable third pair, do you want to play them that much in a game? You want to give them less ice time by default. That means you're giving Carlson, Letang more ice time, and how does that affect them over the course of a season? I guess that's I mean, it, if that can just wear them down, or if you're the Penguins, you want to still keep them in a lighter workload just because yeah, they're older, and if you have them taking on these big roles, taking on a lot of ice time, if that wears them down, where it could wear them down, you don't want to do. I guess that's the catch 22 from a coaching perspective.
Right. That's where kind of the whole gray area comes in. They don't really have a fully set lineup. I mean, no team really does going into
Yeah,
training camp right off the bat, but most of the time, okay, these are the guys we got. We just got to figure out where they're going to go. Like you said, with Letang and Carlson getting up there in age, running them out there 20, 22 minutes a game might not be the greatest of ideas,
yeah.
but hopes are that you get some guys to step up in camp to help lessen that load a little bit.
Yeah, the Penguins have a lot more question marks than I think most teams. I think the irony is that goaltending, which a lot of people say is the weakness, is the one where there isn't as many questions because you at least know who the players are there. You have Jarry, you have Nedeljkovic, you know who's there. What do you make of the goaltending? Is it a strength or is it just passable? Is it something that can keep them competitive? Where do you see overall goaltending? Maybe this is too perspectives where a casual fan may say it's a weakness of the Penguins, but maybe it's something that will actually be a reliable duo or reliable trio for all we know. Where do you see the Penguins goaltending?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, if depending on what goalies you get out of what version you get out of Nedeljkovic and Jarry, it could be a strength like that top six that you got with the Crosby and Malkins and stuff. But you got to keep, for one, you got to keep Jarry healthy. You got to hope he can bounce back a bit, and Nedeljkovic doesn't revert back to the way he was when he was with Detroit that led to him leaving Detroit. But if they both can click and split time, it's definitely a strength to the team.
Yeah, and I think that that helps with a lot of the other issues, especially the defense, which we said is some question marks. It probably it helps cover up some of the issues with their defense as well. Probably, I would assume.
Yeah, yeah. Good goaltending makes up for
Yeah.
quite a bit, but it can't make up for everything.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I guess based on the conversation, it seems like there's a lot of question mark. The overall big picture with their roster is you know what you're getting out of your core. You know what you're getting out of your big four skaters. Uh, goaltending you don't know, but at least you can rely on it more than the other units. Where are they? I mean, in the Metro, which is interesting based on some conversations that the preseason previews, the Metro could be one of those tough divisions that's hard to break through, or it can have a lot of these teams like the not just the Penguins, but the Capitals, the Flyers, the Blue Jackets that fall apart as they did last year. Where are the Penguins in this mix?
I think you're kind of right. You're going to be more of like a hopefully this season a Capitals team that could be pushing that playoff spot if things go the right way. I mean, they're not looking the greatest. I mean, obviously we know how they were last year. They made a push towards the end of the year with the Nedeljkovic carrying the load, but you got, like you said, you got a lot more questions and answers and solutions at this point. So if you can get those figured out, there's a chance they could find their way into a wild card spot maybe. Other than that, I don't. They're kind of buried in that division right now.
It's just the question is if they are fourth or fifth in their division, the fourth or fifth best team in their division, what are their chances of getting a wild card? Where are they in the Eastern Conference? Are they better than the Red Wings, the Sabres, the Senators, that trio, the Lightning, who are still they're the Penguins, but younger and still powering through with their stars, where they have the star power that can get them to the playoffs every year somehow. Where do they stand? At least you still see them as a wild card if everything goes right, or is it there's just too many teams in the Eastern Conference ahead of them?
I think you look at teams like Detroit and Buffalo. They're more on the upswing, and I think they're going to be more of that wild card spot. So yeah, I think that the Penguins are going to be They might be that team that's just on the outside looking in. At best case scenario, they back into a spot. But yeah, at this point, they're going to be likely one of those teams looking from the outside.
And I guess the big question is if they miss the playoffs this year, one, I mean, this is multiple questions, but I guess first off, is this Mike Sullivan's fault? And two, is he on the hot seat? Because three playoff losses in a row. He's one of the longest tenured head coaches in the NHL, one of the big four that just remain. John Cooper, Rod Brind'Amour, Mike Sullivan, Jared Bednar. They're always there. They just remain. Even when there's rumors that they might get fired, they always remain. They're always somehow still coaching because I mean they're great, excellent head coaches. Obviously, Sullivan will be hired if he as soon as he leaves the Penguins, he'll be hired immediately. But is he on the hot seat this season, just in general this season, and possibly if they miss the playoffs for a third year in a row?
I think he would be. I mean, it is kind of difficult because you get Dubas coming in as a new GM
Yeah,
trying to do different things. So the blame wouldn't probably fall 100% on him. But yeah, I definitely think there'd be a little bit more of a warmer seat for them if they don't make the playoffs and have a season like they did last year again.
yeah, and I mean it's interesting because the conversation, of course, like a lot of people are writing these rumors about Sidney Crosby's contract and all, but you can't see him in another uniform, can you?
No, I don't think there's any way around him not being a Penguin. There's just it's
Yeah,
yeah, I just don't see it happening.
it's like there's a few people that are looking at his contract and they're like, oh, maybe uh it could it could happen. Maybe they're thinking of like what team could he play on? Could he join this team? Could he play with McKinnon? Could he play with Marchand? Maybe like someone from Nova Scotia where he grew up. But it's just like at the end of the day, like you see Kyle Dubas getting that done. I guess probably you see him keeping him on the team. So I guess let's head over to the quick fire of the segment of this preview, which is we do I mentioned a question, you give me the first thing that comes to your mind, the first sentence, first quick thought that comes to your mind based on that question. Is that good?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. So first off, biggest storyline heading into this for this season.
The aging core, and if they can make one last push.
Yeah, I kind of agree on that. It's like it's been the story for the past years. I think the other one is what happens next, just like based on that. Uh,
Right.
biggest question mark.
Uh, what you get out of, like we talked about the goaltending situation, what you get out of Jarry after last year is on that big contract that he just got last offseason. Can he live up to it?
I thought we were gonna say depth actually, but yeah,
Yeah,
big goaltending. If it could hold up, that really saves a lot of their really covers up a lot of their issues. Really helps them next season. Yeah, it's a good one. Any breakout stars?
I think. I mean, he broke out a little bit last year. I think Drew O'Connor getting more time with a player like Crosby and with a healthy Rust, I think he's got a chance to take that next step and become a player that they try to help build around when this aging core finally or eventually moves on.
One player who must bounce back.
We'll go back to the goaltending, Jarry. Bounce
Jarry.
back, stay healthy. You could go. You could say maybe a little bit with Carlson, just his all-around game, but
Yeah.
like you said, he didn't have a bad year last year. The expectations may have been a little overblown with how he was with San Jose. So I think you get Jarry to bounce back. Again, it helps out immensely in your defensive end.
Yeah, just going from Norris to not, it seems like such a downgrade, but still had a good season.
Right.
X factors on this team.
Uh, the depth, at some point, you're going to have to figure that out. That's going to be a big thing if they can get production and stability out of their bottom six. Then you got, again, your goaltending is obviously going to be a part of it. There's a bunch of X factors, I guess you can look at. Even your defense. I mean,
Yeah, yeah. It's just like all. I mean, pretty much like you see the depth, and then all these skaters who are depth skaters are all depth players. Uh, any rookies to watch?
I mean, you look at someone like Pickering, like I mentioned earlier. He if he has a good camp, and again the defense is kind of up in limbo, you could see him making a push, or you could even see Rutger McGroarty, who obviously just got traded to the team
Yeah,
from Winnipeg. I mean, they didn't bring him in, I don't think, to send him to Wilkes-Barre. I think they brought him in to bring something to that lineup, a little more youth and excitement to it.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting because the Penguins farm system is ranked one of the lowest ranked ones. Not, I mean, rankings are subjective and all, and the prospect pool isn't necessarily easy to evaluate, obviously. So it's hard to tell if they have a good one. But any prospects that you'd say to circle, prospects to watch in the Penguins farm system, this could go even down the pipeline, further
I
down.
mean, there was a little bit of excitement around Sergei Murashov coming over from Russia, getting his contract done right after developmental camp and stuff. He's definitely one to keep an eye on to see how his development and how he translates to the North American game in his first full year, kind of like Bloomquist did last year. I mean, he had a real strong season for Wilkes-Barre. So I mean, you look at someone like Murashov, you've got Koivunen, you got a few of them that they're not going to be massive X factors, but they're players that could fill in when called upon and if they need it.
And I think for them, if they can just get to the roster and just play a depth role, it really goes a long way with the Penguins, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
Any hot takes or bold picks you want to have about the
We ca-
Penguins?
we kind of touched on it. I think that if they do miss the playoffs, I think this it could very well be the end for Mike Sullivan. Not because again, like I said, not that he's a bad coach. It's just time may have ran its course with the team and him together. I mean, they don't make the playoffs. There's going to be, I would assume, some changes going on big time.
Yeah, I guess this isn't a quick fire question, but what changes would happen, do you think, if they missed the playoffs aside from coaching change? Do you think let's say roster wise, would there be any big changes, or is it still like you're the same core? You mentioned Crosby returning, but do they trade Carlson? Do they try to move on from whether it be Malkin or Letang if they can even? But what changes do you see happening, if any?
I mean, you might be able Carlson moving him might be a little more difficult just because you see what kind of
Yeah.
what they had to give up for him. And I don't think you're not gonna get the same return for him a year later, 2 years later. But you could look at, I mean, you're gonna probably end up going more towards the rebuild mode, probably seeing a few more of these younger kids possibly getting shots even towards the end of the year if they're out of the playoff hunt, and that could start rolling over into next year if things start going south.
Yeah, you mentioned that Carlson contract. It's too much. I don't think it's not much term left, but it's a lot of AAV, a lot of dollars that teams are just don't have. And even with the cap going, the cap went up, and yeah, it's just hard to move on from that. And the best chances the prospects coming up. All right, predictions. Where do you see the Penguins finishing at the end of the season, and I guess the division and the conference as a whole, for that matter?
Uh, I don't see it being much different than last year. I think they'll probably finish towards the bottom middle of the division, and probably I would have to say probably picking top 12, top 15 in the draft, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
Just based on it I want to be an optimism or optimistic with it, but you got to be realistic with it to a certain degree. If you can get Crosby to break the 100-point mark, keep his point per game streak going, and everything clicks, I mean, you might get that one last hurrah from your group, but there's a lot of different variables, and again, like you said, a lot more questions than answers right now. So
it is the thing where if you could squint and say they can make the playoffs, and I think that's the big thing also, not just with them, but a lot of metropolitan teams, but the Penguins specifically, what is their ceiling, which is they get to the playoffs as a wild card team, and then what? You play like the Panthers in the first, whether it's the Panthers or the Bruins or one of these juggernaut Eastern Conference teams, and like I'll ask you that, what is the ceiling for this Penguins team, realistic ceiling for this Penguins team, even if everything goes right and they have the depth there and they make the playoffs, even as a wild card or even as the third in the Metro, because the Metro really is that jumbled up together. What is the ceiling for this team?
I think you're right. You end up you get a playoff spot. Again you play a team like the Panthers, the Bruins, like you said, one of the top dogs, and you maybe win one or two games
Yeah.
if you get the dice to roll your way.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of what we saw with the Capitals last year. Was their ceiling was they got to the playoffs, everything had to go fall apart around them, and then they made it, but they got swept by the Rangers. And similar thing happened to the Islanders. They they made it as a 3 seed in the Metro, but lost in 5 in a series that wasn't all that close. I guess yeah, it looks like we've pretty much covered anything that we should know about the Penguins heading into the season that I guess we didn't cover that is on your mind.
No, that pretty much covers it. I mean, it's probably going to be a season where it's going to be a little bit more like last year. The frustrations, the up and downs. Obviously, every team does it, but all I can say for Penguins fan is just enjoy the ride with 87 still being around. At least
Yeah.
you got that going, and you know you're going to get excitement watching him every night. So,
I guess I'll ask who could be traded this year? Any trade candidates? And that could be a problem if there isn't because you at least
right. I mean,
Gensel helped that.
you got you've got the. I mean, you don't really have any guys that hold a ton of value outside of maybe you don't want to move any of your young guys like O'Connor or Valtteri Puustinen or anything like that. I mean, the only one that could possibly, if things don't go right, and he has a good season, would be Jarry.
Mm-hmm.
If a playoff team was looking for another goalie to help stabilize that spot. Outside of that, maybe either him or Nedeljkovic. If Bloomquist has a good year in Wilkes-Barre, they want to give him a shot. You get rid of one of those two. But outside of that, you don't really hold a whole lot of value with many of your guys. So
Yeah. I mean that kind of is what makes the Gensel trade such a big trade. And when you look at the Penguins as a whole, because they got a lot from him, and that was really the only asset they were able to move. And he's the most movable asset they had, and they ended up getting a lot for him. So and it ends up, I guess, worked out because he was a rental and he left the offseason. So they got a decent
right,
amount, so could help them. I guess that's all we got. So Jordan, thank you for joining. Make sure to check out Jordan's work at the Hockey Writers. She's writing a ton of Penguins work. You also read, I think you also read a ton of prospect work and work at the uh, amateur level too. A lot of prospect stuff. Uh, so make sure to check out his work. Make sure to check out all the work at the Hockey Writers and check out the Hockey Writers Substack. And thank you for watching uh, and tune in next time for another great preview. Thank you.